Welcome to episode 8 of our video podcast. Today, we're going to talk about companionship care services. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive into companion care,
Okay.
using information that's been curated from Medicare Unlimited.
Sounds good.
And, a lot of people think companion care is just, having somebody around to help with things. But it really goes so much deeper than that.
It really does. It's a lot more than just practical help. It can have a real impact on health and well-being.
Absolutely.
Right.
And we're so lucky to have an expert in the field here today
Happy to be here.
who can kind of walk us through all of the ins and outs.
Yeah,
So I guess to start us off,
sure.
what exactly is companion care? How is it different than just hiring a housekeeper, for example?
That's a great question, and it's a really crucial distinction.
Okay.
So, while both companion care and hiring a housekeeper might involve tasks like, cooking, cleaning, laundry, that sort of thing,
Sure.
companion care's core focus is really on that social interaction and emotional support. It's about cultivating a sense of connection and well-being for the person receiving the care.
Right. And we were talking about how, people are aging and they're living longer.
Right.
And I guess as people age,
Yes.
companion care has kind of evolved. Right. It's not a new concept.
It's definitely not a new concept. It's been around for a while.
Okay.
But it has evolved over time as the needs of our aging population have changed.
Okay. So can you kind of tell me a little bit about the history of companion care?
Yeah. So people are living longer. And this desire to age in place, in their own homes
Right.
has really grown.
Right.
So that naturally led to a greater need for services that could address not just like the physical needs, but the social and emotional aspects of getting older.
Absolutely. And so I would think that as companion care evolved, it would have to branch out into different types of services.
It has branched out, and it's kind of like this. You can think of it in these sort of categories. So you've got Homemaker services, which are perfect for somebody who needs help with those daily chores, like the laundry, meal prep, light housekeeping. Then you have personal care services, which provide assistance with things like bathing, dressing, grooming. And then finally, there's Respite Care, which is such a vital resource for those family caregivers who need a break.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I feel like, as a caregiver myself, sometimes it feels like you need a break, and respite care sounds like just a break.
Sure.
But can you kind of explain to me how it's actually more than that?
Of course. So imagine you're caring for, let's say, a parent with dementia. It's very demanding. And it can lead to caregiver burnout, which unfortunately can actually compromise the quality of care that you're giving.
Because you're exhausted.
Exactly. So respite care can give you a chance to step away. Rest, recharge, and also ensure that your loved one is continuing to receive attentive, compassionate care.
So it's a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely. It benefits both of you.
Yeah. So it's more than just practical help. It's about someone's whole well-being.
Exactly.
Now, I'm really fascinated by all of this. I've seen some studies about the actual positive impact of companion care on people's physical and mental health.
Oh, absolutely. There's been a lot of research that shows just how beneficial it can be.
Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
So studies have shown that companion care can dramatically reduce feelings of isolation and loneliness.
And those are both tied to, physical and the mental health issues.
Exactly. They're linked to a whole host of problems.
Okay, so then would it be fair to say that companion care could actually lower healthcare costs?
Yeah, potentially. In the long run, yes. By preventing those issues. Wow.
So by addressing those social and emotional needs early on, companion care can lead to a whole cascade of positive health outcomes.
Give me an example.
Sure. So reduced loneliness can lead to lower blood pressure, improved sleep, even a stronger immune system.
Wow. So it's like a proactive approach to health and well-being.
Exactly.
Listener, I have a question for you. Have you ever felt isolated or overwhelmed while you were taking care of a loved one?
It's a tough job.
Yeah, it is.
And companion care can really provide that essential emotional support and companionship. And really, it can ease that burden on family caregivers. And allow individuals to maintain their independence and social connections.
And speaking of which,
Yeah.
That leads me to Medicare Hub Limited and their mission to provide this really high-quality companion care.
Yes, they're very dedicated to that.
Yeah, and it seems like it goes beyond just filling a need, you know? It really does. They are truly passionate about empowering individuals to live their best lives, no matter their age or their circumstances.
Now, I know our listeners want to hear more about that.
Of course.
So what sets Medicare Hub Limited apart? What do they do differently than everybody else?
Well, their commitment to personalized care is really a key differentiator.
Okay.
They truly understand that those cookie-cutter solutions just don't work when it comes to something as personal as companion care.
So can you give me an example of that?
Yeah, of course. So imagine someone who's very passionate about gardening, but maybe they're no longer able to manage their garden because of physical limitations. Medicare Hub Limited wouldn't just assign any caregiver to that person. They would very carefully select someone who shares that passion for gardening.
That's amazing.
Maybe even someone with gardening experience.
Wow, so they go the extra mile to match people's interests.
Absolutely. It ensures that the person can continue to enjoy a beloved activity.
That's so important, though, as people age.
It is. It gives them a sense of purpose.
Yeah, and so much of that comes from their experience, right?
It does. They've been providing this care for years. And that experience has given them a deep understanding of the nuances of individual needs.
That makes sense.
You know, they've honed their skills. They've built a strong network of caregivers and really refined their approach to make sure they're delivering the highest quality care possible.
So now that we have a better understanding of how they do things, let's get into the specifics of what they offer. From what I've seen, they offer a pretty wide range of services, from like helping with daily tasks to providing more specialized support. So can you kind of walk us through that range?
Yeah, so they cover all the basics. So Homemaker services, personal care services, and Respite Care, making sure they can really meet a whole variety of needs.
But then they go a step further.
They do. They also recognize that some situations require a little bit more of a tailored approach.
Okay, so tell me more about that.
So that's where their specialized programs come in.
Okay, and what kind of situations do those programs address?
So they have programs that are specifically designed for people with dementia, for people who are managing chronic illnesses, and even a program that focuses on fall prevention.
Those are some pretty big areas.
They are.
And you know, it makes me feel more confident knowing that they have programs that are really designed for those trickier situations.
Each program is designed to meet the unique needs of that population.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. So their dementia care program, they know that communication can be really challenging for people with dementia. So their caregivers are trained in these specialized techniques to help minimize frustration and confusion.
That's great.
So they might use visual cues, for example. Simplify their language. And really focus on nonverbal communication to make that interaction more positive and supportive.
So it's not just about having somebody there. It's about having somebody there who really knows.
Exactly. They have that specialized training.
So tell me a little bit more about the chronic illness management program.
Yeah, so that program is all about empowering those individuals to manage their condition. Effectively.
Give me an example.
So let's say somebody's struggling to keep track of all their medications. A caregiver might provide medication reminders. Make sure that they're taking them correctly at the right time. All that good stuff.
So it's more than just the physical help. It's also supporting their health and well-being.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then we have the fall prevention program. Which I imagine is incredibly important.
It's crucial as people get older. So Medicare Hub Limited really takes a proactive approach to this. It starts with a home safety assessment. So they'll come in, identify any potential hazards.
Like what?
Loose rugs, poor lighting, anything like that. And then they'll recommend modifications to reduce that risk of falls.
Wow.
They're not just reacting. They're trying to prevent them.
I like that. So they're really looking at the whole picture.
They are.
You know, from like the physical environment to somebody's health and well-being.
Exactly. They'll also assess a person's balance. Their strength, their gait, to identify any underlying risk factors that might contribute to falls.
And are those things that can be improved?
They can through exercise or physical therapy.
And they can help them with that.
They can connect them with the right resources.
That's fantastic. I love how they're so holistic in their approach. But obviously, we can't talk about companion care without talking about
the caregivers.
The caregivers.
The heart and soul of it all.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And Medicare Hub Limited, from what I understand, is really committed to supporting their caregivers.
They are. They really value their caregivers.
Yeah.
And they know that happy, supported caregivers translate to better care for the people receiving it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about how they do that. How do they support their caregivers?
Well, they start with really rigorous training.
Yeah.
All of their caregivers go through very extensive training before they ever set foot in a client's home.
So they're not just hiring anybody.
No.
They're being very selective.
Very selective, and they're preparing them.
Okay.
So the training covers everything from safety protocols, communication skills, understanding dementia care, chronic illness management, you name it.
So they're really equipping them with all the tools they need. And it doesn't stop there, right?
It doesn't. They also offer continuing education opportunities to make sure their caregivers stay up to date on best practices and industry advancements.
So they're investing in their caregivers.
Yes, absolutely.
Which means they're investing in the clients as well.
Exactly.
Okay, now I want to talk about the emotional aspect of it.
Yeah.
Because caregiving can be very demanding.
It can.
Emotionally.
Yes.
So do they offer any support in that area?
They do. They recognize that caregiver burnout is a real issue.
Yeah.
So they offer resources like counseling services, support groups, even access to mindfulness and stress reduction techniques.
Wow, that's amazing. They're going above and beyond.
They are. They want to make sure that their caregivers feel valued, appreciated, and empowered to really do their best work.
And I think a happy caregiver is going to make for a happy client.
Absolutely.
So now that we've talked about companion care and how Medicare Hub Limited approaches it, I'm sure our listeners are thinking, okay, how do I access this? Am I even eligible for this?
That's a great question. And navigating eligibility can be a little tricky, so let's break it down.
Okay, what are some of the key factors that determine eligibility for these services?
Well, it's not just about age.
Okay.
It's about whether an individual needs assistance with those activities of daily living or requires support to manage a specific health condition.
So it could be someone relatively young, but who has a disability or chronic illness?
It's often determined by those functional limitations. More so than just age alone.
What if somebody doesn't meet the criteria for those programs? Are they out of luck?
Not at all. Medicare Hub Limited can really help individuals explore different solutions, maybe connect them with other community resources that might be a better fit. So they're committed to finding the best possible solution for everybody.
And then there's the question of money, right?
Of course, the funding piece.
Funding can be very confusing.
It can be a bit of a maze, especially when you start looking at options like Medicare and Medicaid, veterans benefits, private pay.
Okay, so let's start with Medicare. Does Medicare usually cover companion care services?
Unfortunately, Medicare generally doesn't cover long-term companion care. Now, it might cover some short-term care after you've been in the hospital, but not the ongoing support that a lot of individuals need.
So what about Medicaid?
Medicaid is a little different. It's a joint federal and state program. And it can cover companion care services for eligible individuals.
But there's a catch.
There is a catch. Those eligibility requirements and the actual coverage vary from state to state.
So you have to do your research.
You really do. You need to know what the guidelines are in your specific area.
Okay, so what are some challenges that people face with Medicaid coverage?
Some states have very long waiting lists for those Medicaid waivers that cover companion care. And some have strict income and asset limits that can make it really hard to qualify.
So Medicaid's a possibility.
It is.
But you have to be very careful about the fine print.
Do your research.
Okay, what about veterans benefits?
Yes. Veterans may be eligible for companion care benefits through the VA. So those benefits are designed to support veterans who have service-connected disabilities. Or require assistance with activities of daily living because of age or illness.
So it's nice that they have specific help for veterans, but I'm sure there's some challenges there too.
There are. The process for applying for those VA benefits can be quite lengthy and complex.
Right.
It often requires a lot of documentation and medical records.
Yeah.
So it can be overwhelming
That's
for
true.
veterans, especially those who are dealing with health issues.
Okay, so they should definitely seek some help
Yes, definitely.
in navigating all that paperwork.
Exactly.
What if someone doesn't qualify for Medicare, Medicaid, or VA benefits?
Is private pay their only option?
Well, it might be, but it's important to look into all the possibilities first.
Okay.
Some people might have long-term care insurance that actually covers these services.
Okay.
And Medicare Hub Limited can help explore those options too.
Okay.
They really want to make sure that everybody has access to quality care regardless of their financial situation.
So even though it can seem overwhelming,
Yes.
there are ways to make companion care financially accessible.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's say somebody's listening to this and they want to access companion care through Medicare Hub Limited. What does that process look like?
Well, they've tried to make it as simple and straightforward as possible.
Okay.
So it all starts with an inquiry.
Okay.
You can reach out to them on their website, by phone, or by email.
Right.
And they will connect you with a care coordinator
Okay.
who will gather some basic information
Okay.
about your needs and your preferences. So it's personalized right from the start.
Exactly. They want to make sure that people feel heard and understood
I like that.
from the very first interaction.
And then what?
Then the care coordinator will schedule a more in-depth assessment,
Okay.
which can be done in person or virtually,
Oh, that's nice.
depending on your preferences and your location.
So during that assessment,
Yeah.
what kinds of things are they looking at?
They're gonna take a look at your overall health and well-being, your ability to do those daily tasks, your social and emotional needs,
Okay.
and even your living environment.
So they're getting a full picture
Exactly.
of what's going on. And then what?
So after the assessment,
Yeah.
they'll work with you to develop a personalized care plan.
Okay, so it's not just
It's like a tailored plan.
to meet your specific needs.
I like that a lot. Okay. And so the care plan
Yeah.
will kind of outline what services you'll be getting. It's exactly a schedule of care, that kind of thing.
It lays it all out.
It's great.
So everyone's on the same page.
Okay. And then is that it? Or is there ongoing communication?
Oh, communication is key throughout this entire process.
Okay.
So they really encourage that open communication between the person receiving the care, their family, the caregiver, and the care coordinator.
So everybody's in the loop.
Yes, they want to make sure everyone is on the same page and that any concerns are addressed quickly.
Yeah, that makes me feel better as like a potential client, knowing that, you know, you're not just alone to figure things out on your own.
Exactly. It's all about that support.
So now I want to circle back to caregivers because
they're so important.
Yes, and I know that we talked about their training, but I'm wondering what other support is offered to caregivers.
Well, they offer a range of services specifically to meet the needs of their caregivers.
Because, again, supporting the caregivers is essential to providing high quality care.
Okay, so what kind of things are we talking about?
So, for example, Respite Care is a real lifeline for caregivers who need a break from their responsibilities. It allows them to step away, knowing that their loved one is being taken care of by another professional.
And that's good for everybody.
It is. It's good for the caregiver's well-being, and it's good for the person receiving the care.
So it's that win-win again.
Yes.
Okay, what other support is there?
Well, there's counseling services for caregivers who are maybe struggling with the emotional challenges of caregiving. They also have support groups where caregivers can connect with others who understand what they're going through.
That sense of community is really important.
It is. It's so powerful to realize that you're not alone in this journey.
And it sounds like Medicare Hub Limited also provides a lot of education and resources.
They do. They recognize the importance of that. So they give their caregivers access to articles, videos, workshops on topics ranging from dementia care to stress management techniques.
So they're equipping them with the knowledge and the skills really do the job well.
And also to take care of themselves.
Okay, now I want to talk about caregiver burnout. Because I think that's something that people kind of shy away from talking about.
It's often whispered about, but not really addressed.
Yeah, and I think it's so important.
It's crucial to talk about it openly.
Yeah, so for those of you who aren't familiar with the term, what is it?
So caregiver burnout is basically a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion that results from the chronic stress of caregiving.
So it's not just being tired.
It's more than just being tired. Yeah. It's a feeling of being completely depleted.
Okay.
And it can really impact your health, your relationships, your overall well-being.
It's a real condition.
It is.
With real consequences.
Absolutely. So it's not something to take lightly.
So how do you know if you're experiencing burnout?
Well, aside from that constant fatigue, you might start withdrawing from your friends and family, losing interest in hobbies you once enjoyed, maybe feeling increasingly irritable, resentful, neglecting your own needs. You might even experience physical symptoms.
Like what?
Headaches, changes in your sleep, appetite changes, things like that.
And I want to say to our listeners, if any of that is resonating with you, it's not a sign of weakness to ask for help.
Absolutely not. It's a sign of strength.
Right. And I know that Medicare Hub Limited has all these resources in place.
They do.
To help caregivers prevent burnout. So can you tell me a little bit about that? What do they do?
Well, first of all, they really try to educate caregivers about the warning signs so they can recognize it early on. And they also offer a lot of practical tips and strategies for preventing burnout.
Like what?
Things like setting those realistic boundaries, scheduling regular breaks, even if it's just for a few minutes to step away and prioritize activities that bring you joy.
So self-care.
Self-care is essential.
But that can feel so abstract.
It can.
When you're a busy caregiver.
It can be hard to find the time.
So what would be like a practical example of self-care?
Yeah, so start by setting those realistic boundaries. You know, you're not superhuman. You can't do it all. Learn to say no. Schedule those breaks, even just for a few minutes, to step outside and take a deep breath. And make time for things you enjoy. Whether it's reading, listening to music, spending time in nature. Just those small things that help you recharge.
And it's not selfish.
No, not at all. It's essential for maintaining your own well-being.
And if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of others.
Exactly. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Okay, so we've talked about the support that Medicare Hub Limited offers. But I imagine there are other resources out there.
There are, and they actually encourage caregivers to utilize those external resources as well.
So can you tell me about some of those?
Sure. So online support groups can be incredibly valuable. They provide that safe space to connect with others, share advice, offer encouragement.
And it kind of normalizes the experience.
It does. It makes you feel less alone.
What about government programs? Are there any that people should know about?
Absolutely. So there's the National Family Caregiver Support Program, which provides grants to states and territories to fund services for caregivers.
What kinds of services?
Respite care, counseling, and training.
That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a great program.
And what about local communities?
Local communities play a huge role too. So senior centers, churches, nonprofit organizations, they often have programs that are specifically designed for caregivers.
And what kinds of things do they offer?
Respite care, support groups, educational workshops, even financial assistance.
So it's really worth looking into.
Absolutely.
What's available in your area.
Exactly. And Medicare Hub Limited can actually often provide referrals to those resources as well, so they can kind of help caregivers navigate all those options.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So they really are like a hub.
They are.
Not just for companion care, but also for supporting the caregivers.
Exactly. They recognize that supporting the caregivers is really key.
It all comes back to that.
It does.
Okay, now I want to dig a little deeper into caregiver burnout. You mentioned that Medicare Hub Limited is really good at being proactive about that. So can you explain a little more about how they actually do that?
Yeah, so recognizing the signs early on is really important. So some of those signs might be feeling constantly exhausted even after you've had a good night's sleep. Maybe withdrawing from those social activities that you used to enjoy. Or even experiencing physical symptoms like headaches or changes in your appetite.
Those are some really important things for people to be aware of.
Yes, definitely.
So, listener, if any of that is resonating with you, please know That it's not a sign of weakness to reach out for help.
Absolutely not. It's important to take care of yourself.
It's a sign of strength.
Yes.
And so Medicare Hub Limited equips their caregivers with those coping strategies.
They do. They encourage things like setting realistic boundaries, scheduling those regular breaks, even if it's just a few minutes, to step away and take a deep breath, and prioritize activities that bring you joy and help you relax.
I love that. And I think it's really important to remember that self-care is not a luxury.
It's not. It's a necessity.
It's a necessity.
Especially when you're giving so much of yourself to care for someone else.
Exactly. And it's not selfish.
Not at all.
So preventing burnout really benefits everybody involved.
It does. The person receiving the care and the caregiver.
Okay, now I want to shift gears a little bit.
Sure.
We've been talking a lot about Medicare Hub Limited and what they do.
Yeah.
But I want to acknowledge that obviously the resources for caregivers extend far beyond what any single organization can provide.
Absolutely.
So what are some other examples of those resources that are out there?
Well, online support groups can be really, really helpful.
Okay.
You know, they provide that safe space to connect with other people who understand the challenges of caregiving, get advice, offer encouragement.
That sense of community
is so important.
Is so powerful. What about government programs?
Government programs, there are a few.
You give me an example.
So the National Family Caregiver Support Program provides grants to states and territories to fund services for caregivers.
Okay, and those services include things like?
Respite care, counseling, and training.
I didn't know that.
It's a great program.
And then what about local communities? I'm sure they play a role too.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
Senior centers, places of worship, nonprofits often have programs tailored to caregivers' needs.
What kind of things do they offer?
Respite care.
Okay.
Support groups, educational workshops. They might even offer financial assistance.
Wow. So it sounds like there are a lot of resources available.
There are.
But it can be.
It can be tough to navigate.
Yeah. Overwhelming to know where to start.
It can, and that's where Medicare Hub Limited can often step in.
Okay.
They have those connections with those local organizations.
Right.
And can provide referrals.
So they're a good starting point.
Exactly. They can point you in the right direction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now I want to talk about something that I think is really important.
Yeah.
But also, I think people don't like to talk about it.
Right. It can be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And that's caregiver burnout.
Yes. It's so important to bring this out into the open.
It is. So for our listener who might not be familiar with the term, can you explain what it is and why it's such a big deal?
Sure. So caregiver burnout is basically a state of profound exhaustion, physical, emotional, and mental.
Wow.
That comes from the chronic stress of caregiving.
So it's not...
It's more than just feeling tired.
Okay.
Yeah, it can really impact every aspect of your life.
So how do you know
if
you're experiencing that?
Well, some of the signs we mentioned earlier, fatigue, withdrawal.
Okay.
You might also find yourself feeling increasingly irritable or resentful, neglecting your own needs, even having those physical symptoms like headaches, changes in your sleep patterns.
And again, I just want to say to the listeners, if any of that is ringing true for you, it is okay to ask for help.
It's so important.
And there are steps that you can take
Absolutely.
to prevent it.
Right.
Right. And we've talked about self-care.
Self-care is essential.
It is. But again, that can feel like it's an abstract thing.
Yeah, it can be hard to actually put it into practice.
Yeah. So what are some actual practical tips for self-care?
So start by setting realistic boundaries.
Okay.
You can't do it all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Learn to say no sometimes. Schedule those regular breaks, even if it's just for 5 minutes to step outside. Take some deep breaths.
Yeah.
Make time for activities that bring you joy.
I like that.
Reading, listening to music, spending time with friends.
And it's not selfish.
No, not at all.
To do those things.
It's essential for your own well-being. And by taking care of yourself, you're actually better equipped to care for someone else.
It's that win-win again.
It is.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about the current state of companion care.
Right.
But I want to look ahead a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
What does the future hold?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
One of the trends I'm really excited about is the increasing role of technology.
Oh, I was hoping you'd say that.
Yeah, it's really transforming so many aspects of our lives.
Absolutely.
And it's starting to make a big difference in companion care as well.
So can you tell me a little bit more about that? How is technology changing things?
So, for example, remote monitoring devices are becoming more and more common.
Okay.
These devices can actually track things like vital signs, movement patterns, medication adherence.
All from home.
All from the comfort of home.
That's amazing.
And that data can be shared with caregivers and healthcare providers, which allows for proactive interventions.
Right. So it's almost like an early warning system.
Exactly.
For potential problems.
It's like having an extra set of eyes and ears.
That's great.
Yeah. Constantly looking out for the person.
And what about connection? Because I think that's a huge part.
It is, and technology can help with that too.
Yeah.
So things like video conferencing and social media are making it easier for seniors to stay connected with their families and friends.
So it's not just about the physical stuff, it's about
reducing those feelings of isolation and loneliness.
And I think that that's so important for people's mental well-being.
It's crucial.
Absolutely. And I love that they're using technology in such a creative and compassionate way.
It's really amazing to see all the possibilities.
Okay. Are there any other trends in companion care that have you excited about the future?
Yeah, another really important trend is this growing emphasis on personalized care.
Oh, and that really ties in with what we've been talking about.
Yeah, Medicare Hub Limited is really a leader in this area.
Yes, and I like how we're moving away from this idea.
Right, the one-size-fits-all approach.
That one-size-fits-all.
This doesn't work.
And so now we're really starting to understand that everybody has these unique needs and preferences.
Exactly, and that should be honored.
So how is that actually playing out? How are things becoming more personalized?
Well, it goes beyond just the care plan itself.
Okay.
It's about creating a whole care environment that's tailored to the individual.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, so if someone loves music, you might incorporate music therapy into their routine.
That's great.
Or if they're a big gardener, you might find ways to incorporate gardening activities.
Right.
Even if it's in an adapted way.
I love that.
Yeah, it's about finding those things that bring them joy and purpose.
So with all of this in mind, what does Medicare Hub Limited envision for the future of companion care?
Well, they see it evolving into this really holistic approach to well-being that goes far beyond just providing services. They believe companion care should empower people to live fulfilling lives in their own homes.
I love that.
For as long as possible.
Yeah, and it really feels like everything we've been talking about today, from personalized care to caregiver support to embracing technology, it all kind of comes together.
It does.
To create this really supportive system.
Absolutely. And Medicare Hub Limited is dedicated to being a leader in this evolution.
I love that.
Yeah, constantly looking for new ways to improve their services.
Okay, so as we start to wrap up this deep dive, I want to turn to the listeners and just ask, what's resonated with you today?
What insights have you gained?
Yeah, what are your thoughts on companion care now?
Take a moment to reflect on what stood out to you. Maybe it's the variety of services that are available, the importance of personalized care, or the potential of technology. Whatever it is, hold on to that insight.
Absolutely.
Because it might be more relevant to you or someone you know than you realize.
I think sometimes we think companion care is for somebody else.
Right. But it could be for you, a loved one, someone in your community.
And I think as we move into the future, it's exciting to see how this field is going to evolve.
It is. There are so many possibilities.
Yeah, it's really amazing to see how companion care is evolving, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like I came into this deep dive thinking that I knew a lot about it.
Right.
But I've learned so much.
Yeah, it's one of those things that seems pretty simple on the surface, but when you really get into it, there's a lot to uncover.
There really is. I mean, we've talked about everything from defining it to the different types, to the personalized care plans, the caregivers, caregiver burnout, how technology is playing a role.
Absolutely.
It's a lot to take in.
It is, but it's all important.
It is. And I hope that our listener has found it to be as valuable as we have.
It's been a great conversation.
It has. And so as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listener with a final question.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about, you know, the benefits for the individual and their family. But what about the impact on society?
That's a really important point to consider. You know, as our population ages, the need for companion care is only going to increase.
Right. It's not just a personal issue or a family issue anymore.
Exactly. It's a societal issue.
Yeah. And so investing in these kinds of services,
yes,
I think really strengthens communities as a whole.
It does.
Because you're allowing people to age in place with dignity and independence.
Right. And that makes for a more connected and vibrant community.
Yeah, where everybody feels supported. And with organizations like Medicare Hub Limited, I really feel optimistic about the future of this.
I do too. Their dedication is really inspiring.
It is. So listener, as you go about your day, think about what you've learned.
Yeah.
Has your view on companion care changed at all?
What are your thoughts now?
Yeah. And how can we, as individuals and as a society, advocate for these things and make sure that it's accessible to everybody who needs it?
That's the goal.
It is. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Into companion care. We hope you found it helpful.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please visit our website to learn more about our services at medicarehub.co.uk. Bye for now.